This video contains content that may be confronting.
Well, our next guest has just returned from a medical mission for Gaza. Dr. Mohammed Mustafa usually joins us from Perth, but we were lucky enough to speak with him earlier in the studio. And just a warning, you might find some of the details of his story distressing, although they are very important. Well, Dr. Mo, thank you very much for joining us on News Breakfast.
Thank you very much for having me.
What an incredible and devastating experience you've had in Gaza. Can you tell us what's motivated you to go to Gaza for a second time? It's something many Australians can't imagine making that decision because it is such a dangerous place.
It's not a decision my mum was very happy about, but I think everybody over the last almost 2 years now has seen the images of children and women and the devastation in Gaza. And I felt like as a doctor, I couldn't stay silent and I had to do something. So, that's what motivated me to go the first time. And that's what motivated me to go the second time.
What's it like to prepare to go in? Because I imagine, like, logistically, are you preparing a will? Are you preparing passwords for loved ones, things like that, handing over information? Because you'd have to be prepared to going there. You'd have to be prepared to die.
So I put all my stuff in a storage unit. I gave up the lease of my apartment. I sold my car. I gave the keys to my other car to my friend. I gave the number of my father to my financial advisor who had access to my bank accounts.
Just in case?
Just in case. I'd written a will that I'd handed over to a friend. And, I pretty much made sure that I told everyone before I left that I loved them. And, yeah.
So devastating. When you arrived, the ceasefire had lapsed, and then all of a sudden hospitals, places of shelter, all throughout Gaza, nowhere was safe again.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Because you were having to do work, you were having to do surgery, you were triaging multiple patients while you were hearing bombardments.
I mean, the first night was extremely scary because at about 1:30 in the morning, the bombs started going off, and it wasn't one or two, it was a dozen every 5 minutes. And, the force of the bombs was so intense that I'd actually fallen, the window had blown in, and I'd fallen off my bed. And instantly, we were in a room of international doctors, instantly we knew something was wrong. And I grabbed my doctor's bag, my stethoscope, and I was still in my pajamas, and we went down to the emergency department, and within 30 minutes, the whole emergency department was full of bodies, and we ended up having to treat people actually outside on the streets.
Do you switch into like a different state when you do that? Because you'd be dealing with parents who are bringing their kids in, you'd be dealing with people who might be screaming in pain, but they're probably going to live, whereas you'd have to be looking at others with limbs blown off. I mean, what's that like as an emergency doctor in that environment?
There was a particular incident that happened, that night. I was covered in blood. And we have to carry our IDs with us 24 hours. And when I pulled out my Australian passport from my pocket, it was covered in blood. And I couldn't help but remember Zomi, who was the Australian aid worker that was killed. And when they found her, her passport was covered in blood as well. And, she hasn't had any justice for what's happened to her. And I reached out to her family, and they've given me their blessing to carry that cross forward and go out there and fight for Zomi. And Zomi died trying to feed children in Gaza, and not just Gaza, she fed children all around the world. And I want to do something in honour of Zomi, and I want my government to help me, not just me, but her family, to do something for Zomi and help honour the legacy that she left behind, because she died feeding those kids in Gaza. And I feel like I let down those kids, so I need to do this for Zomi.
We hope you know that you didn't let down those kids, and your actions were incredibly brave on behalf of many Australians.
What do your loved ones tell you when you're going in? They must try to stop you for sure. And now that you're back, does it stay with you? Like, having covered really horrendous things before, you kind of think about it when you close your eyes. Is that still the situation for you?
My mum flew all the way from the UK to Jordan to meet me at the border because she had been so worried. And
when you came out?
Yeah, when I came out, and when I'd crossed through Israel and arrived in Jordan.
How was that? Did she give you a mouthful? I mean, I'm just thinking as a parent myself.
It was so funny because my mum was so proud, but she was so scared, and she came with biscuits and cakes and juice.
Such a mum thing to do.
And everyone, when they got off the bus, she started handing out everyone biscuits and cakes, and she was saying thank you for helping the children in Gaza, and then she gave me a big hug and she started crying, and then I started crying. I was like, Mum, please, not in front of... These are all security personnel. They all think I'm a big guy. Don't make me cry in front of them. But, you know, I have to thank her as well because, you know, she was so supportive. And I remember that night when the first bombings went off, and the first person that I called was my mum. And, you know, it was about halfway through, and I'd seen so much death, and I called my mum and I said, look, Mum, I want you to forgive me, Mum, if I've ever let you down. Yeah, because we didn't know whether we would, you know, what would happen that night to us, but I just told her to forgive me, and, you know, she started crying, and she said, I love you. And I told her I love her too, and we just went back to work. But, you know, it is difficult, you know, when you go to places like that, but it's, you know, for me, I'm okay. It's my parents that I worry about, and my mum. I know how, you know, if it was up to me, I would have stayed, but it was because of my mum and how upset she was. You know, that's why I left, and I left because I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to save those children in Gaza. There's many ways that we can do it, and I want to sit down with the Prime Minister.
Yes, and what would you tell him? Because as you've referenced, this has become such a heated, emotional, heartbreaking debate here in Australia and around the world. What are the practical steps you would like to see the Australian government take forward, or whomever wins the next election?
So I don't want to make ultimatum demands because I understand how politics work. You ask for something and you don't get it, and, you know, it can cause issues. You know, I want to leave that open, but I have solutions. I have proposals that have been approved for hospitals, field hospitals in Gaza. My team, Panzerma, have got that ready. I also, you know, want to sit down with them and just tell them what was going on and how we can better protect aid workers in Gaza. We don't have to be a major player. We just have to be a major healer and a major feeder, and that will win the hearts and minds of everyone there. And that's what I want to do.
You want to go back? I've heard you say this.
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Without a doubt, you know, I get so many messages from patients and parents that were there, and the doctors and nurses that were there. And, you know, sometimes when the bombs would be going off, you know, we would just sit down and have cups of tea because it was so common, you know, that the bombs in the room would be shaking, and you eventually you'd learn to just live with it. And if it was going to hit the hospital or if it was going to hit anything, then at least we'd all go out together. And, you know, those are some really bonding moments that you have with people when, you know, you're on the front lines together. And, yeah, amazing group of people that I met out there, some of the bravest people as well. You know, we'd have to stay in the hospital, but some of those paramedics would be running, you know, into the line of fire to pull people out of rubble and save them. And, you know, you just want to rub off a bit of that energy onto you.
Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, I know many Australians are inspired by your words and your actions and your journeys to Gaza. Thank you very much for joining us on News Breakfast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.